Alright man, the Thunder are just one win away from closing this series out, and what we witnessed in Game 4 was absolutely spectacular. The picture you're looking at captures the essence of what happened on that court. And then he's driving in a straight line at defenders like Nesmith, Nembhard, and Mathurin, just bulldozing his way to the rim with a force that's been absolutely captivating to watch. This OKC defense is absolutely suffocating on every single possession. The Pacers still managed to find a way to make this a competitive game, cutting it down to just 2 points at crucial moments. A lot of that comeback magic came courtesy of TJ McConnell, who was absolutely impossible to stop when he got going downhill. That's when we witnessed two absolutely massive three-pointers from Dort and JDUB. Both of them finding themselves surprisingly open for players of their caliber in such a crucial moment of the game. And on that Lou Dort three-pointer, remember how in the previous game, they were running that beautiful JDUBS GA two-man game that was giving the Pacers all sorts of problems? Well, on this particular play, JDUB slipped the screen perfectly, and you could tell that Nembhard was anticipating that exact action. Chet switched onto Haliburton, and for about 5 seconds, it looked like the Pacers just completely forgot how to be the Pacers. Haliburton just kind of idled with the basketball, almost like he was processing what he was seeing and couldn't compute a solution fast enough. Whether it was him or somebody else making decisions in those moments, too many of these possessions became jump passes, which is just death against OKC. I've covered this topic extensively before, so I'll keep it brief, but they were among the teams that committed the most fouls per game during the regular season. They understand that they're going to commit some fouls as part of their defensive identity. When you're telegraphing where you're going to throw the basketball like that, you're essentially playing right into their hands. But here's the thing, they're still a fantastic team regardless of how the whistles blow. Their success isn't dependent on getting favorable calls or getting away with anything egregious. He was caught off balance just slightly. But that SLSGA needed to get downhill and create the chaos that led to Dort's wide open look from beyond the arc. Haliburton needed multiple dribble handoffs, multiple screens, just trying to create any sort of separation from Dort's suffocating defense. But even when he managed to get Dort off of him temporarily, Chet was right there, switching seamlessly and maintaining the same level of pressure. It was creating an environment where driving lanes were virtually non-existent for the Pacers' primary ball handlers. So that man was weaving through traffic like he was playing a different sport altogether. The whole performance felt different because OKC had some more sophisticated screen actions for both SGA and JDUB in this game. That Caruso steal, that SGA deflection, it's like they re-operating on a different frequency than everyone else on the court. Throughout these entire playoffs, we've watched him look absolutely electric. Like he was plugged into some sort of basketball power source that the rest of us don't have access to. The way he's been orchestrating offenses, creating for teammates, and just controlling the pace of games has been phenomenal. That turnover basically sealed the game right there, even though it had been pretty competitive for several minutes leading up to that moment. What struck me most was how many times throughout this game you'd see Haliburton bringing the ball back out after someone had switched onto him, or after he'd de-run his initial dribble handoff with Turner or Siakam, or whoever was setting the action. But what we saw today was a completely different player. He's dealing with this calf issue, and on top of that, he's facing this switching defense that's designed specifically to neutralize players like him. You could see him searching desperately for any sort of driving lane, any crack in the armor, but it just wasn't there consistently. The crucial two-point game and clutch shots, they weren't just relying on individual brilliance. They were creating systematic advantages that allowed them to generate quality three-point looks consistently throughout the game. Even with all that offensive firepower on display, you have to give credit where it's due to the Pacers, because this is exactly what they do best. Pacers' resilience, despite Haliburton's struggles. J-Dub just delivered probably the best game of his career, and I'm not saying that lightly. This young man has been on an absolute tear for 3 straight games in these finals. He's doing it in every conceivable way you can imagine. We're talking about transition buckets where he's running the floor like a gazelle. Backdoor cuts that are so crisp they look choreographed. Even with Haliburton clearly dealing with something in that calf, and let me tell you, but before we dive deeper into OKC's excellence, I really want to address what's happening with Haliburton, because the contrast is stark and telling. Now, we did get some genuine suspense in this game. Before we break down the individual brilliance of SGA and JDUB, I want to take you to that moment when it became a 2-point game. From the television angle, that JDBT3 looked like it was going to brick completely. The trajectory seemed off. The rotation didn't look quite right, but somehow it found its way through the net. Then, as OKC does with frightening consistency, they just started stealing what should have been routine passes. There were several switches throughout this game that completely stopped drives from Haliburton. And there was one particular sequence late in the game that perfectly encapsulated the Pacers' struggles. He attempted a drive where he was essentially driving straight into traffic. It was very awkward, and it's uncharacteristic of a player of his caliber and basketball IQ. He'd have these moments where you could almost see the frustration building. This "what the hell am I supposed to do right now" expression on his face. Now, as always with this OKC team, the referee discussion is going to come up, especially when you're talking about the physical nature of their defense and how SGA operates within that system. If you were to dissect every single play with a microscope, and I guarantee you could do this for every NBA game that has ever been played, not everything they do gets called by the officials. Let's talk about JDUB's performance in more detail, because early in this game, as the Thunder were switching extensively on defense, you had Dort staying glued to Haliburton like he was attached with industrial strength adhesive. J-Dub was switching when he needed to as well. And this defensive cohesion was creating missed shots and turnovers that he was converting into easy transition opportunities on the other end. But to get back to the screening concepts that really made a difference in this game, it felt like there was much more involvement from Isaiah Hartenstein and some from Chet as well. J-Dub had this absolutely nasty spin move off of Nesmith on one of his baskets late in the game, where he finished over Nembhard after creating that initial separation. They were settling for a lot of contested 2-point shots, and SGA only managed to get one 3-pointer, which came off of that JW 2-man game late in the contest. The question heading into this game was whether they could generate more 3-point attempts. And they definitively answered that question with several quality looks from beyond the arc. Now, I understand that I'm operating with the benefit of hindsight and results-oriented analysis, and I'm just a guy watching from the outside. But you'd see situations like Nesmith helping at the free throw line off of an SGA Chet screen, which then led to an open 3 for someone like Wiggins. He had that beautiful turnaround jumper over Nesmith late in the game that showcased his expanding skill set. At a certain point in this series, it felt like JDUB realized something crucial. If he plays with the same level of force going at Nesmith that Nesmith uses to defend everyone else, but it didn't feel like there were that many questionable plays tonight. For the Pacers, we've already discussed Haliburton's struggles extensively, but TJ Connell's run in the third quarter. Or maybe it was early in the fourth, and the Thunder were essentially telling him to go ahead and shoot from 3-point range. He did have one shot where his foot was on the line, but the shot-making display was genuinely spectacular. We're talking about offensive rebounds, putback opportunities. A transition 3-pointer with Lou Dort practically in his face. He just created enough individual baskets to maintain some level of offensive flow. Even with the immense defensive pressure that OKC was applying consistently. There was this sequence where he crossed over into a screen to get Caruso off of him, then immediately crossed over again because the screen was designed to put SGA into the action. I'm specifically remembering one play where Kays Wallace helped in the corner to swarm Siakam underneath. Your coaching staff is happy. Your teammates are happy, and you move on to the next possession with positive momentum. Given how absolutely nuclear he went in the third quarter, and considering the struggles that Haliburton was having throughout the game, but that man is smarter than 99% of human beings on Earth. When it comes to basketball strategy and in-game adjustments, his track record speaks for itself, and second-guessing coaching decisions in real time is always easier from the outside looking in. At the end of the day, I'm just here analyzing and saying things. But the complexity of these decisions in crucial moments is something that only a select few people truly understand at the highest level. However, they actually managed to cut the lead from 10 points down to 2 points when McConnell was on the bench. So it's not as if the entire comeback was solely because of his individual brilliance. But with these Thunder defenders, you can make the textbook correct decision, execute it properly, and they'll still find a way to disrupt your timing and steal the basketball. That knee putback dunk was absolutely crazy. The athleticism and timing required for that play was off the charts. Are people upset about the officiating tonight? Honestly, don't know. There were definitely some offensive rebounds that led to second-chance three-pointers that might have frustrated some viewers. It's that extra level of anticipation, athleticism, and defensive instincts that separates elite defenses from merely good ones. The rim and Siakam actually made the correct basketball play. Nembhard was open for what should have been a quality look. But Kays just deflected the pass anyway, which perfectly illustrates what makes this OKC defense so special and frustrating to play against. That was some absolutely wild improvisation and basketball creativity. I believe it was mostly the third quarter. It was absolutely insane to witness. The officials seemed to let both teams play with appropriate physicality. JDUB has just been absolutely cooking for 3 straight games now, and it's been a sight to behold. He can create the separation he needs to get quality shots off. The improved screening allowed them to get inside more comfortably than they had in previous games. And it felt like they were generating more open three-point attempts as well. We're talking about screens set around half court, which they've utilized throughout this series. But there seemed to be a greater emphasis on these actions in Game 4. You'd see empty side screens, Kenny Hustle screening for SGA or J-Dub to get them free from defenders like Nesmith and Nembhard. That was a significant development because in the last game, while they managed to win, it was really ugly basketball. Pacers' defensive decisions and help coverage. I did notice that the Pacers had a couple of plays here and there where I found myself questioning whether the help defense needed to be quite that aggressive. This defensive decision-making is incredibly difficult in real time. And as I'm critiquing these choices, I'm reminded of that spectacular block that Siakam had on SGA late in the game at the rim. It came with Siakam helping off of Lu Dort. So there's always going to be this push and pull dynamic where you're retrying to take away one thing while potentially giving up something else. But getting back to Juby's performance, he was finding success with multiple backdoor cuts where Isaiah Hartenstein would have the basketball either in the post or at the top of the key. Jube's aggressive play and overall team performance, there were a couple of possessions where, in the moment, I found myself wondering if J-Dub might be pushing the envelope in terms of what could be considered an offensive foul. This was an amazing performance by OKC's top 2 players, complemented by Wiggins knocking down some crucial three-pointers. Excellent rim protection throughout the game, seamless switching on defense, just overall basketball excellence across the board. He was spinning off of JDUB like he was a veteran crafty guard, pulling up against Isaiah Hartenstein on screens with complete confidence. Siakam's production and defensive pressure. Siakam was able to generate enough offense for himself throughout this game to keep the Pacers competitive. However, and this is a significant caveat, he also turned the basketball over 6 times, which is a concerning number in a game of this magnitude. Against any other team in the league, you make that right pass and you get rewarded with an open three-pointer. Final analysis and coaching decisions. And then there's Halliburton, who's dealing with this calf issue while simultaneously trying to navigate Lu Dort on every single possession, or Caruso or Wallace, or even J-Dub switching onto him. I guess one thing I could picture people discussing is whether Rick Carlisle should have ridden TJ McConnell more in that 4th quarter. If you want to criticize Carlisle's decision-making, I suppose you can try.